I've been 55 knots on an America's Cup boat right next to Barcelona port with a bunch of chase boats with paramedics on board chasing me around, and that felt ridiculous. So to do that thousands of miles away from shore, that mindset blows my mind.
The idea that monohulls could actually go fast around the world than multi-hulls, everything's being turned on its head right now, and it's such an exciting time for our sport.
Hello and welcome back to the Foil Podcast, episode 16. This is a weekly chance for Freddie Carr and Andy Rice to discuss all things sail racing. Thank you very much for joining us wherever you are in the world, watching or listening. And if you're doing one, remember you can do the other. We welcome your comments or questions. And of course, our handles are We Are The Foil. And everything you need to know is at thefoil.com. Please do join in the discussion. Plenty to talk about this week. Alinghi, Ferrari, and we're going to get on to some of your questions and comments very quickly. But first of all, let's welcome Andy and Freddie. Hello, fellas. Where are you both?
Well, I'm back at home again in Winchester. I was briefly in Milan yesterday, which we'll talk about.
Yeah, and you were a day. You flew in and out in a day, right, Andy, to go to Milan
via Stansted. So
Stansted. Shocker.
Yes. So yeah, I could moan, and you wouldn't have any sympathy for me if I told you about my travel woes.
No,
with
and
Ryanair.
no one wants to hear it, mate. To be honest,
no, exactly.
But I do feel for you going to Stansted. That is not fun, but good dedication to go and get some good scoops that we'll hear all about. And Neil, I'm in Parma. I came down today. And I am privileged, and I genuinely mean privileged, to be sailing on Rainbow, the J class, for the next 3 or 4 days as we get race ready for this season. And just walking down the dock and walking onto that boat is humbling. And then you walk up onto the foredeck where the spinnaker pole was already kind of half hoisted on the mast. And you crap yourself a little bit because you realise the size of the gear that you're going to be dealing with. And it's just the most beautiful boat that we as a crew walk around today to get ready for a training session tomorrow, which I'm so excited. I doubt I'll sleep much tonight. It's going to be a pretty special 4 days.
Love it. And of course, both of you write really well across everything that you're over at thefoil.com. So if you like reading really in-depth, enthusiastic, creative, well-written articles, then go there, find out more about what our two senior correspondents are doing out there in the real world. I just wanted to get early to some of your brilliant comments and questions over the last few weeks, because I feel like people are very much involved in the conversation, but we don't always give you the airtime on the podcast. So first up, here's one from Haldane Rowan 3150, the 3150th of the Rowan Haldanes. Thanks very much, guys, for this session. Very informative. As a Kiwi, is there any news when the black foils could be back on the water? This is obviously a SailGP question. The Aussies always like to beat us at any sport. So a question from Rowan Haldane, and it's a very good question because obviously the Kiwi boat, the Black Foils boat in SailGP was destroyed pretty much, and then what was left borrowed for parts to build the Frankenstein monster of the DS Automobiles Team France boat that is back on the water. So what do we know about the Black Foils being able to compete again in SailGP?
I'm afraid I don't know, but my guess logistically would be that it's going to be Portsmouth when we next see the Black Foils, because it's just 10 miles down the road from where that boat is being put together. And I would be surprised if they are going to ship it across the Atlantic only for it to come back again. So that's speculation, but that would be my guess.
Yeah, and I know from talking to a good friend of mine, Richie O'Farrell, who's been a boat captain on a number of America's Cup campaigns I've done. He's now heavily involved in the tech team. He's in charge of the wing, but obviously is heavily involved in Composite World. And he travels on tour and then we'll go back to Southampton to go and oversee components getting built. And he said they are absolutely flat out in Southampton, not just getting the New Zealand boat up and going and built, but obviously there's another boat that needs to come online pretty soon. And then there's talk of also a boat going to Pensacola. So are we into a 2-boat build or a 3-boat build? But I think regardless, like the tech team are like pedal to the floor right now, trying to get these things out the door.
I think they're pedal to the floor all the time, and it is the biggest bottleneck in SailGP. There are a number of bottlenecks, but that has been the constant bottleneck of SailGP for a number of years. And if you think that the target is to get to 20 boats on the start line eventually, then that is going to keep on going. So it doesn't matter what happens to boats. Let's hope there are no major collisions for the rest of the year. But even if there aren't, they're still going to be pedal to the metal, just trying to churn these boats out as quickly as they can. And we've asked this before with the Spanish going as well as they have done. Will they really want to hand over that boat, the oldest boat in the fleet, as the one that sort of gets put out to grass in Pensacola, or put to very hard second life in Pensacola as the training boat, whilst they take receipt of a new boat? Or should they just hang on to that boat because it's going so quick in it?
Yeah, really. And the other thing that I'm thinking about is, I'm right in thinking that the Kiwis now, with the Spanish having found new investment and the Swiss having found new investment in the last fortnight, are the Kiwis the only team that is not franchise owned? Is that right, Neil?
Yep.
Okay.
They are now the only boat.
So is that and I would imagine, and I've heard rumours that they've got a lot of people looking at buying into that franchise because of the way SailGP is going. As someone coming new into the sport, I would be much more encouraged to invest my millions of pounds or dollars, whatever it is, into a team that has a brand new F50. So it's tough for the Kiwis right now, but it could be a blessing in disguise, as they might be slightly more attractive for investment with a brand new F50.
Does that really matter? I mean, all these boats are meant to be the same. They're meant to be one design. I don't hear complaints in the fleet about, oh, they've got a faster boat than we have.
No, that's
I
true.
mean, that's not to say that they don't exist. But the idea is that all these boats are the same, and an old one like the Spanish one seems to be going as well as a new one. But it is one of the great conundrums, if that's the right word, of why the Black Foils haven't managed to find investment, why one of the most successful teams, one of the most bankable teams, is still what we call a Larry team.
Who knows? It's got the new boat smell, hasn't it? That's what I'll say. It's got the new boat smell.
And the elves are working very hard in Southampton at SailGP Technologies to get that up and running. But yeah, so the general vibe, to answer your question, is we imagine, we don't know, but we imagine Portsmouth, because the idea of building it in Southampton and getting it to Bermuda and then New York and then bringing it back to the south coast of the UK probably doesn't make much sense. Next question/comment comes from Sean Carr. This is picking up on what we were talking about with potential plans to change the end of the season, considering the situation in the Middle East. Sean Carr says, how epic would a grand final in Perth be in late November with some proper breeze and waves, not to mention the Moth Worlds are in Perth right before this at the start of November. So someone enthusiastic for the for a change to the end of the season, but I guess we haven't had any news because they can't make a decision yet.
No, but we hear that decision can't be too far away. It takes a while to reset the logistics of moving these 110, however many 40-foot containers it is around the planet. So we hear that we're going to have to get answers to that in the next few weeks. And we also hear that the calendar for 2027 will be locked in the next few weeks as well.
And I wonder whether there is, with sponsors, with team sponsors, I wonder if there's like a minimum amount of events in a season, Grand Prix in a season, that are contracted to do, or whether that's null and void with a global event that we're seeing right now. But I'm sure they are scrambling and looking at plans A, B, C, and D to give us the 13 promised events for this season.
Then you did a very good video, Andy, about starting and penalties. And so Leah Rigg says, very ambiguous. Some of the rules look like they need rewriting to reflect on the reality of SailGP, speed and maneuverability. And then Sly6627 replied to that, having watched all SailGP races, I'm still confused by lots of decisions. I get the impression that the rules allow Craig Mitchell to make any ruling he wishes, and he's still able to point at the rules to justify it. And then the Doctor 907, the 907th Doctor, answers that, saying Craig doesn't make the decisions on his own. There's a group of umpires umpires. He just relays the call and has the conversation with the others about the decision. There are videos about it. So the community is kind of correcting and answering itself. But just to wrap this up, what a comment from you guys about the umpire's role and how quickly they make decisions, and if they, always get it right, like VAR in football.
Yeah, the rules have evolved, haven't they? As foiling has come in, they've evolved from loosely 2013, but definitely we've made step changes since 2017 in SailGP and in the Cup, and I think they're in the right place now. I think that the where we are lacking is, I'm an absolute football geek or soccer geek if you're in North America, and one of my favourite shows on a Monday morning is called Ref Watch. And they give a senior match official a half-hour window every week to explain their decisions. And something that you might have watched as a football fan in the heat of the moment on a Saturday and gone, that's absolute nonsense. You hear the ref talk through the processes of him making the decision, and it makes sense. Now, with a VAR decision, which is a video assistant referee, they can take up to 3 or 4 minutes to make that decision. There's a real time pressure on the umpire group to have that decision made in 30 seconds. So they've got a much harder job. Now, also when they're in a full fleet, they have about 30 protest buttons hit a race. When that is split in half, it quarters. So they will be looking forward to a split fleet in next year. They can make more informed decisions without noise of lots of protest buttons. But what I would implore is, let's have a ref watch. Like, Andy, I know you have a great relationship with Craig, and you reach out to him after everything and go, explain this, explain that, much like the video you've done. But that should be, I would like to see that rolled out widely across their channels. And I tell you what, if they don't do it, let's do it ourselves.
Yeah, I know Craig is always very happy to help us, and he really likes to the audience to understand more deeply how it is that they do reach their decisions. And the other factor, of course, is all the data pouring off the boats, and some of those decisions are automated, I believe, and it doesn't mean that there isn't human oversight of some of those, but I think probably sometimes because the speed of the way decisions need to be made, a lot of the time it's the positioning in the boats, and they get an automatic answer back from the AI. But that's something that, well, let's see if we can get Craig on sometime. Let's see if we can actually have a chat with him. But one thing I've never heard him accused of, but you might know differently, Freddie, is that I don't think anyone in the fleet accuses Craig of bias.
No, not at all. No, there's none of that nonsense that goes on. But I'd like to. Wouldn't it be fun if the drivers and the crew knew whether it was a human or a robot that gave them a penalty? I'd love to hear Tom Slingsby effing and jeffing a robot. That would be classic.
Yeah, and also whatever it is, billion data points a minute coming from the Oracle. I just think they should use CFAX instead. So I guess for both of those, we just have to remember the human beings behind the umpire screen and the microphones are doing the very best they can with a huge amount of information coming in, whether it's the broadcast or whether it's the official umpire's decision. But thank you very much to everyone who has commented on our videos or sent us a question. And we do try and moderate them and respond online, but also we're going to do more when we can to answer them in the podcast. So fire them in. The handle is We Are The Foil. And we read your comments. Thank you very much. So this week, in a very Devil Wears Prada move, naturally to one of the most prestigious and glamorous design events in the world, Milan Design Week, we sent Andy Rice
via Ryanair. Yeah,
via Ryanair from Stansted. But it was quite, you being there was quite an exclusive thing. Explain why you were there and why it's relevant to us here on the Foil podcast.
And it was Design Week in Milan, and that was part of the reason why there was the unveiling of the livery, the colours of Ferrari Hypersail, this incredible moonshot boat, as Freddie has described it. One of the most exciting projects that we've ever seen, and actually maybe the J-class yacht of its day, because Freddie, you were talking about how overwhelming it is to step on board Rainbow, and I think the J-class yachts were the most exciting moonshot yachts of their day, and Ferrari Hypersail is that version of the most exciting project that perhaps we're looking at in the 2020s right now. And so it was appropriate that it was Design Week in Milan, and we went to the Ferrari offices in central Milan to find out more about Ferrari Hypersail. And I was one of a lucky few journalists to be invited along to this event. I incorrectly guessed with my friend Luca Vallata, the foiling week guy who also lives in Milan. I said, it's obviously, Luca, it's going to be red, right? And he said, no, I don't know. I think it's going to be yellow and black. And you know what? Luca was right. It's yellow and black. And we heard the historic reasons why yellow, the racing helmet of one of their famous Ferrari racing drivers back in the 60s. And so it's still got a lot of that heritage of Ferrari. But it's also got something, Freddie, that you'll be familiar with, the merging of automotive with maritime. So this is Ferrari stepping into our world, stepping into the sailing world and doing it in a massive way and taking on the dominance of the French, because this offshore scene has been dominated by the French for decades now. But this boat has serious ambitions. A monohull capable of beating an hull team around the world for a Jules Verne record attempt, which has only ever been attempted by multi-hulls up until now.
So first of all, just give me an idea. Why is Ferrari getting involved with this? And what's it for? So Ferrari, of course, in terms of the colours, the last year, the Le Mans 24 Hours was won by the AF Corsa Ferrari 499P, which was yellow, driven by Robert Kubica,
Hey, buddy,
and
this
and
you're
Phil Hansen.
well, this is a sailing podcast, Neil. Wind it in, mate.
I'm just putting it in the context because that's the hypercar, and it was yellow. But they've won 3 Le Mans 24 Hours in a row, and it was red, yellow was the last 3. So yellow makes a lot of sense. Anyway, that's the color out of the way. But that was the first time they'd won Le Mans since '65. So Ferrari and that's prototypes, and this is like a prototype boat. So to put it in a kind of motorsport context, because it's a prototype, because it doesn't really have a series it's going to race in, right? What's it for?
It's partly the way that the automotive industry is moving, with regulations changing and a move away from fossil fuels towards renewable energy. So it's partly to find out what is possible with sailing, with a boat that uses all forms of renewable energy. And Freddie, you're going to hate this, but this is not just going to be a wind-powered boat. Potentially, I mean, you wear, Freddie, you wear fancy watches where you just flick your wrist and they wind up and they keep on going. Those perpetual motion watches that you and your professional sailors like to wear on a night out when you're wearing your penguin suit. So it might incorporate some of that kinetic energy motion. Solar panels, 100 square foot or square meters, whatever it was, of solar panels. The whole of the foredeck is solar panels. And they're not going to start with all of these forms of energy. They're going to start incorporating some of them. Get this, wind power, i.e., is it going to be a windmill or something like that draws power back into the batteries? And you're really going to hate this, but they're also talking about hydropower. In other words, an impeller that would have to be going through the foil, because that's the only bit of the boat in the water. So hydro generation as well. So looking at all forms of renewable energy, which makes this potentially one of the most ambitious boats in terms of sustainability and purity, really, in terms of not requiring fossil fuel, which is quite interesting for a Ferrari project.
So in the sense of the reason that cars have gone racing for generations as a kind of race to road technology, it's kind of a moving laboratory for this technology. I was particularly interested in the fact that the deck is solar panels and it's got a grippy surface, so you're running on solar panels. I think that's pretty cool and has, implications for all kinds of applications of solar panel in the future. So that's and obviously all of that power is to remove sort of diesel and reduce batteries and stuff like that for all the things that need power that can't just be wind powered on a boat like that. So where will it race apart from sort of doing offshore like Jules Verne? it doesn't really have a series it can race in. Would there be like a single make series? Would they make 10 of these and race them against each other? What's the plan?
I'm pretty sure this is a one-off.
Okay.
I speaking to the designer Guillaume Verdier, who's always keen to point out he's not the only designer. He's one of a huge team that have worked towards this project. But Verdier, pretty much everything that he's touched in the last few years in the offshore scene has gone incredibly quickly, and he's behind the Gitana 18 design, the most recently launched Ulteam, just launched a few weeks ago. So it's not quite clear whether it will actually race in conventional races. I think it's going to set out to break records. It has explicitly stated Jules Verne record attempt, and then it leaves you wondering, well, can a monohull really be a multi-hull, a trimaran like an Ulteam? And then when Verdier and Glenn Ashby, who was also there, explain it to you, you think, yeah, actually, this is sort of like a multi-hull in terms of the way that the foils sit in the water, but it doesn't have the windage of the beams and the floats of, you know, three hulls of a trimaran. So it's aerodynamically going to be superior. So in terms of top end speed and maybe high end sustained speeds, it might be faster. Where it might be slower is getting through the non-foiling elements of a round the world record attempt, like through the doldrums. So it'd be really interesting to know. And I did ask Verdier which would be faster, the Gitana 18 or Ferrari Hypersail, and of course he was far too diplomatic to say which that might be.
So for me, this has got vibes of, you know, like the Artemis 2 heading off to the dark side of the moon. You know, it's like very space, you know, technologically developing R&D technology. So I think, Freddie, thoughts from you on this, and of course, as someone who's worked very closely where automotive and sailing have come together with your work with Mercedes over the last few years.
Yeah. So I'd start by saying that I'm not that fussed about the colour, but there you go. I think it's a very timely injection and introduction of all these renewable energy sources to get into the marine industry, and to have a design body like Ferrari pushing that is fantastic, because we all know that the way that sustainability and the planet and the natural resources going, this is brilliant on that side of things. But the thing I'm most excited about is how this thing is going to sail, what it's going to look like. It's 100 foot. It's effectively an AC75 with a foiling rudder with a horizontal on, and then we've got, much like the AC75, the arms out the side. And then, Andy, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's got a canting keel with a foil on it in the middle of the hull as well, right? So there's 4 appendages in the water. And it's the numbers that you came back and you told me that they were going to do that got me seriously excited. I mean, when they're talking about doing a Jules Verne, or aiming to do a Jules Verne in just over 30 days, saying that the boat will be able to do 50 knots. Now, I've been 55 knots on an America's Cup boat right next to Barcelona port with a bunch of chase boats with paramedics on board chasing me around, and that felt ridiculous. So to do that thousands of miles away from shore, that mindset blows my mind. And they are targeting high 30s, sort of low 40s to break the records. And how they're going to sail this thing, like, how are they going to take this double skin mainsail that Glenn Ashby has come up with, this concept, and depower it and put reefs in it? And we all know that the sails at the front will be furling, but the logistics around operating a double skin mainsail is hard. So how they're going to turn that into an offshore look will be fascinating. But you've hit the nail on the head, Andy. We know that we've seen Raven, the semi-foiling boat, that's got a similar look going across the Atlantic, and that looks spectacular. But this thing is not going to be semi-foiling. This is going to be out the water for what they hope will be the majority of the time. And it could be the boat that is up in pub walls in 80, 100 years' time, like you see the J-classes dotted around the world in all the various pubs that I go and drink in. This Ferrari Hypersail could be of that ilk. It could redefine what we think sailing is.
Yeah, and I've been a bit tough on the AC75 in the past. You know, I'm not a big fan of it for the America's Cup, even though I love the technology. But I think that Grant Dalton and Ben Ainsley, and of course Guillaume Verdier, who came up with the concept of the AC75, deserve credit for showing us what was possible. And you've sailed on these boats a lot, Freddie, round the track in flat water. And now for Raven and then Ferrari Hypersail, to see this new generation of offshore boats leaning on the same kind of AC75 concept. I know it's quite different, Ferrari Hypersail, but you can see some of the origins of AC75 there as well. The idea that monohulls could actually go fast around the world than multi-hulls. Everything's being turned on its head right now, and it's such an exciting time for our sport. And to have someone like a company like Ferrari showing interest in sailing and what that could do more broadly for the sport.
That's the interesting one for me. I mean, Neil, you asked me a couple of minutes ago. I never actually answered it, but as you said, working with Mercedes and the Athena design group in the sort of half in the 2021 Cup, but then fully coming on board in the 2024 Cup, you have to look why Ferrari are doing it. And I mean, it's great for our sport, as I said, much like Mercedes being involved and Red Bull previously with Alinghi, now not with Alinghi, and getting involved. And I think the cynic in me would say there's a lot of very strict rules around Formula One design hours, design people, cost caps in that world. And by having a branch out into a sailing world can lend their design group projects that they are designing on without necessarily ticking up Formula One design hours. So you can, in theory, this is all speculation, they could employ a larger group of Ferrari designers and have a few side projects going on here and there that aren't necessarily ticking up the Ferrari design hours. That would be a skeptical way of looking at it. The positive way of looking at it is that they really are excited about this sailing project and the sustainability side of things, and good on them for doing so.
And do you think it has the potential? Obviously, it's very early days. You've only just come back from Milan, but do you think it has potential for some of this tech to trickle down to SailGP, America's Cup, etc.? You know, because if they do hit innovations quickly, in the same way that electric racing reduces the battery and it increases the recharge for road going electric cars, do you think it has a chance to trickle down quite quickly through the chain?
Yeah, we might even see a propulsion system in SailGP at some point. But no, absolutely.
There's a difference between propulsion and generation, Andy. Come on.
No, there is. I'm just yanking a chain, Freddie. But it's so exciting because this project of this scale and scope has got the possibility of allowing people like Glenn Ashby to investigate how to create a double skin reefable mainsail system, which we don't fully understand, but that clever little bogan from Victoria, Australia, seems to be able to work out. How many Glenn Ashbys are there in the world, by the way? Because he just pops up everywhere all the time. He was only in Rio last week for SailGP with the French, and he's got his finger in so many pies, but the guy's so humble. He got a rousing round of applause when he made his speech at the Ferrari event. They absolutely love having Glenn around. But there's one example with just that double skin reefable mainsail. That will surely be trickle down technology that we see spread further into the sport. And I think we're going to see many other examples. And when you speak to non-sailors about let's just get a boat round the planet by any means necessary, there's something really pure about that. It's much easier to understand that concept of no holds barred, use whatever you can to get yourself around the planet as quickly as possible. It's sort of a bit like the Kevin Costner Waterworld thing, when the that sort of fossil fuel ran out and we didn't have access to any more diesel or petrol or anything else. What would we do? And it's quite attractive to us sailors to think maybe sailing would actually be one of the most important forms of transport.
Yeah, and one of my least favourite moments when I do sort of coastal / offshore races on mini maxis, whatever that might look like, you have that moment in the middle of the night where you're at one with nature, you're watching the stars, you're going, this is really lovely. And then you have to go and turn the engine on to charge all the instruments. You know, it's a pretty revolting moment, and you just hear the engine rattling away for an hour while everything charges up. So anything to take that away, I am for.
Well, funnily enough, I did an interview with Guillaume Verdier. He was really keen to get this off his chest and talk about this very subject, and this is what he said. How exciting a day is this for you, the unveiling of the boat to the world?
It's quite exciting. But, I speak in the name of all the friends working with me, 16 people, plus the team at Ferrari who worked on the system. So, I mean, for all of us, it's quite nice, you know, to show what we are working on since probably 3-4 years. So it's a big work. It's years of work, actually, if it was only one person.
And how was the crossover between the marine world and the motor world worked in terms of designing this boat?
Well, you know, people working in automotive, they speak the same language. It's the physics of a moving object. So we're talking physics is like structure engineering to make sure it doesn't break. And then you have the aerodynamic, which is the engine. So for them, this is the engine as a sail. And on the drag of the tires will be, you know, the tire has to resist side force, and here is the foils. They have to resist side force. On the lift of the hull or the foils is what is carried on the asphalt, so by the tires as well. So it's very similar. Let's say, force and moment balance, but it's a totally different object. We had actually an in-between project, interesting, with Glen Ashby. We did a land yacht on head.
Involved in that as well,
and
right?
so we did, with my team, the land yacht, and we had to do the opposite, to go into the tire technology to understand that it was totally new, but we use the same simulator.
I'm probably underrepresenting you, but I was going to say 2 amazing boats due to come out. Gitana 18 has recently launched and going through testing. This is yet to launch. How do you see the relative performance of those boats?
Both projects are limited by cavitation. Both projects are limited by top cavitation speed. Both projects are limited to similar lift-to-drag ratio. So the lift-to-drag ratio is how much is being lifted by the foil and how much it drags at this lift. So similar proportions. The difference is the weight. This is a way heavier object, so probably slower to accelerate, slower to decelerate, and more difficult in transitions in the doldrums. So it will be probably a very different object in the water altogether, but we're going to discover it. And the interesting thing about this boat is that being a monohull, you are sailing in the same wave pattern. The multihull can be sailing in 2 different wave patterns because it's very, very wide. You can have a wave pattern in the center and a wave pattern different on the foils on the side. In this one, it's closer.
Yeah. So less aerodynamic drag compared with the multi-hull, but like you say, maybe the multi-hull has the advantage in lighter non-foiling conditions.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very slender body, and you can play the equilibrium on the main hull if you don't take off. But this one is very much of a main hull, looking like the main hull of Gitana as well, a little bit, if you look carefully. And you also will try not to heel over, you know. Yeah.
Right.
So it's a little bit like a kid's tricycle, you know, and trying not to touch too much and not heel over.
So food for thought there from Guillaume Verdier for races like the Ocean Race and even maybe the Vendée Globe, which is already incredibly successful. But I really love Verdier's take on trying to achieve that purity and clarity of purpose with these offshore races.
And so what do we know, timeline Who's going to be on board? Do we know anything more about that?
Timeline is for launch end of 2026, but it'll be like a soft launch, like Gitana 18, where it's going to be 3 or 4 months from launch of Gitana 18 before it starts trying to hydrofoil. It's going to be lots of shaking out of systems, so that launch in 2026 will be one of a number of steps before they finally get Ferrari Hypersail fully ripping. I asked Glenn Ashby if he expected to be on board. He said he'd love to be, but he's not sure he's got a Jules Verne attempt in him. I think he might do if he was asked. I mean, even
it's only going to take 30 days. You might
Exactly.
as well, it's just a long holiday.
With Glenn, it would take less, wouldn't it? So, he actually missed his daughter's 17th birthday yesterday to be there at this event in Milan.
Hope he got her a nice handbag then.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he was in the
That's
best
what
place
she's
for it.
into. Just thinking of Milan Fashion Week,
We got it, Freddie. We
Okay, I've just got to make that clear. Because he's in Milan Fashion Week.
Yeah, we got it.
Devil Wears Prada, and so does
all
Glenn's
of that.
daughter.
All of
Yeah.
that. Wow.
Yeah, phew. Anyway, we'll see. We get comments on that this week.
I just got to make a note. Always buy Freddie a nice handbag.
Yes. But yes, in terms of who's going to be on board the boat, don't really know. And Enrico Voltarini, part of Red Bull Italy SailGP team, is the new project manager. Has taken over from Giovanni Soldini. Don't really know why. Don't know the politics of that, other than sort of a sense that maybe Giovanni Soldini is quite a seat of the pants kind of. Let's stick our finger in the air and use our emotions and our senses to take this project forward. And Ferrari are a bit more nuts and bolts and a bit more Excel spreadsheet about the way they want to do things. It's just maybe a bit more of a scientific approach that they're looking for. That's the best that I could get out of why there's been a change of project manager. So yeah, I don't know the makeup of the sailing team yet.
Quite a moment for Italy as a country in the sort of world of sailing.
Absolutely. And, without the French, we would hardly have an offshore scene of the kind that we have right now. So I don't want to diss the French because they are fantastic and they're such an important part of our sport. But I'm really pleased to see a project outside of France of this size and this ambition. And I hope it encourages others, because I think there are some more frontiers to be explored with boats like this and with Gitana and all the amazing old teams. And while we don't really know the full sort of run of what this boat is going to be put to use for, it's going to be incredibly exciting to find out.
Yeah, just think about where we are in our sport right now. We've got this "we're not going to die wandering" moment in SailGP, where an incredibly wealthy man is backing a league to the hilt, which is fascinating to watch and great sport. We've got an America's Cup partnership that we're seeing for the first time in the history of that event. That's going to be exciting to see how that goes out. Andy, you're all over the changing world of the Olympics and how that is scored and what that looks like. That feels like a real pivotal moment. And now in the offshore world, we've got these two amazing boats with Gitana and now Ferrari that are leading the way in monohull and multihull drag racing around the planet. I mean, this feels like a pretty spectacular moment to be viewing the sport and partaking in the sport, doesn't it?
Yeah, I totally agree on that. The top end of the sport is looking fantastic.
Strongly agree. And over the course of the next few days on thefoil.com and across our socials, We Are The Foil, you'll be able to read plenty more and see plenty more from Andy's trip to Milano to mix it with the cognoscenti, as I think they're called, and the tifos. I wonder if the Ferrari team will have tifosi, like bringing in fans from their automotive world. We shall wait and see. Okay, moving on. We finally have news of the personnel for Alinghi. I think it's just breaking now. So let's line up what we know so far, please.
Yeah, very hot news out of Barcelona at the moment, where Alinghi, the team that we've probably learnt the least about so far going into this cup cycle, other than the Americans, which are super fresh into this world, they have announced some of their crew moving into AC38. Now, that is a past American Magic helm, Paul Goodison. Phil Robertson, who was with Alinghi last time round as a tune-up driver and a coach. We've got Jason Waterhouse, who was also with Alinghi last time round, but could not race because of nationality rules. But he was entrenched in that team last time round. So with Phil and Jason, they've got two returnee Alinghi crew people. Also returning is Nico Rolas, who was at the launch of the partnership as young Swiss sailor. I say young, yeah, he's still young. I'll call him young. A past Optimist world champion involved in SailGP. Pietro Cibello is there, who trimmed the main sheet on Luna Rossa in 21 and was with Alinghi last time round, and Natalie Brugger. So they're the names that we know so far. And it's a pretty exciting lineup, I would suggest. There's a lot of talent on that boat moving forwards.
Yeah, that flight control talent of Jason Waterhouse, I'm sure, is going to be really important for them. And the knowledge of Paul Goodison from American Magic is going to be super important to them as well. So yeah, that is looking like a strong setup. But what's their design side, technology side going to be like? I mean, I don't think we saw the best of that boat last time round. I think that boat had great potential, which wasn't fully realised in Barcelona 2024. So I think the fundamentals of the hull are fine, but of course most of it these days, Freddie, is in the foil, isn't it?
Yeah, it is in the foil and the control systems, as we spoke about. And for those names that we've just rattled off, like, congratulations to them all. To sign up to an America's Cup cycle is a big moment in your personal career, but almost as notable is the people that we haven't listed off, the people that were with Alinghi last time round, and for now they might still be announced down the line, that have not been mentioned with Alinghi this time round. The hiring of Goodison stands out for me. It's what we've talked about a lot within the America's Cup. He brings the intellectual property from American Magic. Now, everybody there other than Goodison was with that group last time round, and by hiring Goodison, they bring in a lot of that knowledge from American Magic. We know Paul's history with the America's Cup. He was a tune-up helmsman and also a wing trimmer with Artemis in the AC40 back in 2017. He then signed with American Magic, and he was Dean Barker's mainsail trimmer. And we'll all remember those famous comms on that windy day when they capsized their boat against Prada out in the Hierarchy Gulf, about Goodison talking about going right turn at the top and doing a simple bear away set. And they ended up doing a sort of tack bear away left turn, got slow, got loose, and ended up capsizing. And that pretty summed up his America's Cup with that team. He re-signed to go with American Magic in 2024. This time not as a mainsail trimmer, but as the portside helmsman alongside Tom Slingsby. And they did an incredible job. From memory, they won the first AC40 regatta. And they did an incredible job. That team was just beginning to find a nice pace in 24. They certainly, I remember going round when we were all sailing on the water off the shores of Barcelona. They were the early pace setters for the challengers. If you put Team New Zealand to one side, American Magic, probably 6 weeks before the first starting gun in the Louis Vuitton, were the team to beat. They were super confident. They would happily, you couldn't line up officially that well, but they would happily come in and sail around you and show you, us as the Brits, that they were a little bit faster than us at that time. And then he had his injury, didn't he? He was, at the end of a sailing day, he went to lift a mainsail off the boat, and these mainsails are really heavy, helped move it, and he stepped not only with his own body weight, but with the weight of the battens and the mainsails, and basically got catapulted down the hatch in the middle of the aero end plate in between the two cockpits, and smashed his ribs to bits. And that was the end of his AC. And he is a good mate of mine. I've sailed a lot of TPs with him. I went up through the Youth Olympic system with him. And to say that he was devastated to lose that opportunity to race in the LV I think it was the end of the end of the qualifying series, and then into that amazing match that they had with Luna Rossa, it broke his heart. So he's got unfinished business. He hasn't had a straightforward America's Cup ride, has he, Goody? But I would say because of that, he's a pretty potent hire. He's a pretty ruthless lad from the north of England. I would go as far to say that he's probably got a bit of a chip on his shoulder when it comes to his America's Cup CV. He's certainly not completed and competed at the level that he'd want to. And he's got there because he's a laser Olympic gold medalist and a 3-time Moth World Champion. So that's a hell of a hire. And then sort of in that world with him, I would imagine, driving at the front, we've got Phil Robertson. And I know, Andy, you watching Phil Robertson month in, month out, helming the Italian SailGP boat, he's one of your favourite drivers.
Yeah, he is. He's also one of the most unpredictable in some ways, and I just hope he keeps his distance with those AC75s.
Yeah,
I mean, the rules don't allow you to get that close anyway, do they? The rules are pretty strict on how closely you can engage. But yeah, he won't be holding back in the pre-start. That's not what Phil Robertson is about. So it'll be really interesting to see that team in the start box and how aggressive they choose to get.
Well, I think everything in the America's Cup is going to get closer because we're going into the third iteration of the rule. I suspect there is going to be more design package sharing that we've ever seen before, but that will come out in the next few months. But because of that getting closer, across all of the crew lists that I have seen so far, there's obviously a lot of people out of Olympic sailing, specifically the 49er, a lot of foilers. The only out-and-out match racer that has graduated through the Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron match racing school, that world famous match racing school, then to develop onto the M32, he still goes foiling his muff. It's Phil Robertson. Last time round, he was a tune-up helmsman for Alinghi. And if rumours are to be believed, they would get in the simulator and Phil and Dean, who were driving one boat against the race crew, would give them a bit of a duff up. So it's a very astute hire, isn't it? In a world where the racing is going to get closer and match racing and boat on boat strategy and tactics and potentially pre-starts might look a little bit different again. I think that Phil is a real good one.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And it's really nice to think that some of those old school match racing moves and that residual knowledge might still be relevant in this modern foiling world. And Phil's got a good combination of talents and skills right there.
Absolutely. Then let's keep talking. Jason Waterhouse, Olympic silver medalist in the Nacra from Rio, since then has been entrenched in the SailGP world. Now, if I was to give my opinion on the three best flight controllers in SailGP, then Waterhouse is right there with Parkinson and Andy Maloney. Those three for me set the bar. And Jason was with Barcelona in Barcelona with Alinghi last time round, and it'll be his first foray into America's Cup racing. But in this new world of foiling, away from the America's Cup, he is probably there as number one or number two in the world. So another nice rehire, along with Nico Rolas, who was out of their old race crew, someone who raced in Barcelona 24. He was that guy. He did race on board the yacht last time round. And I met Nico for the first time this year, Andy, as you and I were flying around the world covering SailGP. He used to be involved with the Swiss SailGP syndicate, has left them and is now a reserve sailor for the Canadians. He's a very understated, quiet chap, bubbling with talent. He won the Optimist World Championships in 2014. Now, anyone knows if you win the Optimist World Championships, you are a generational talent. So Nico is that guy. And he is, being a Swiss national, holding the flag for the Swiss. So a fantastic hire there as well. The more I think about it, the more this slightly different group of personalities does gel and make sense.
I think you've landed on something there with the kind of nationality protocol. You eventually got to a Swiss athlete, Pietro and Natalie Brugger.
Yep. Yeah, so my understanding is Pietro was a coach for Red Bull last time round. And as I've previously said, he was the main sail trimmer for Luna Rossa. Being Italian by descent, he's been heavily involved in the 49er Olympic campaigning with his brother for decades. That's like many foiling athletes have come out of that 49er training school. I think we've heard a rumour that he potentially qualifies now with his involvement with the Swiss team over a number of years as a Swiss national when it comes to the America's Cup qualifying rules. So with Nico, Pietro and Natalie, there are your Swiss. I'm not sure how that fits into an AC40, but yeah, it will be interesting to see. And Natalie, Andy, you know from your Olympic background, narrowly missed out on a medal in Rio in 2016 in the laser, right?
I don't know Natalie super well, actually. I know her other half, Will Ryan, pretty well, the Aussie sailor who's now with Red Bull Italy. So I don't know Natalie super well, but yeah, certainly a really high pedigree Olympic sailor.
And she was involved with Red Bull last time round as one of their helmsperson on the AC40 in the women's AC. They didn't set the world on fire. The Swiss female team in that first ever Women's America's Cup, but it's reps, isn't it? And it's reps that women sailors have been denied up until that last AC. So Natalie got her reps in the AC40 last time round, would have learned more around foiling and that America's Cup world than she's ever seen in her life. And we know that women are going to be at the forefront of this America's Cup in AC38 with a position on the AC75. So she'll have to take all of that learning that she took in Barcelona and transfer it onto a boat that is 35 foot longer and a bit more sporty to sail. So yeah, it's a good team. It's a really good team. I think they're doing a couple of days AC40 training in Barcelona as we speak. And then let's see what they do with their 75, another 75 to roll out the shed. You'd hope sooner rather than later.
This AC40 event in Cagliari is gaining importance all the time because the more that we hear, the less likely it sounds that we're going to get many other or any other events this year. I am hearing a rumour about Toulon being host venue for another AC40 event. It sounds like the politics in Naples are just too difficult to make it happen. But there's going to be a lot riding on this Cagliari event if this is the only time that they get to race the AC40. And this new world of democracy apparently isn't going that well because you need unanimous decisions or agreements to be made to get stuff across the line. From what I hear, not majority decisions, unanimous decision. Which, if that's true, that sounds absolutely nuts to me.
Yeah. I don't know the ins and outs of the new partnership, but what is kind of funny, isn't it? You've got SailGP that's got putting the war to one side and the greyness at the end of the year. You've got the SailGP at one end of the spectrum that's got all of the events and no training. And then from following my socials over the last few weeks, you've got the America's Cup that's got all of the training and none of the events. So it's a bit odd, isn't it? But it is good seeing how seriously all the teams are taking this event in Sardinia on the road to Naples Regatta. And they need to, particularly the teams who are integrating new youth sailors into their roster and getting the youngsters up to speed quickly, because it could be a real test for those guys and girls who have only sailed in simulators to get up to speed in real life.
But Freddie, it also takes me back to 2015 when you were Land Rover BAR. And as I understand it, the Brits put quite a lot of store in doing well in the AC45 series as a way of sort of proving that you were going in the right direction. And then other teams pretty much put that to one side and said, don't care. We're just all about making this AC50, what's now the F50 catamaran in SailGP. Just we're going to concentrate on the 50 footer. We don't really care about this circus in the 45s. And you guys did really well. You won that event in Portsmouth, I think.
Yeah, we won the whole series actually. Just to pull you up on that. Maybe.
Yeah, no. So you're proving my point. But it didn't go so well for you in the proper boat in Bermuda. So how relevant is it doing well in an AC40 event to the bigger picture of doing well with the AC75?
So for us with Land Rover BAR, it was we were yes, we had our original investors that helped us get off the ground, but we were looking for commercial partnerships, and we saw doing well in the America's Cup World Series as a huge vehicle to promote ourselves, promote the sport, promote the Portsmouth, and get our sport pushed out onto the British sporting papers, which it did, and us doing well in that World Series definitely led to more financial backing from various companies that meant that we could arguably be more competitive when we hit the start line in Bermuda. And we also got 1 point. We got one round robin point that meant, and we were real touch and go at one point with the French about who would make the semi-finals. And until we beat them in the second round robin, that 1 point could have proved decisive. But I don't know what this World Series counts for. We knew early on in that cup that if we won the World Series, we'd get a round robin point. That round robin point is worth millions, if not tens of millions of pounds to win a race in the LV. But we're still waiting to see, aren't we? We're still waiting to see what this AC40 World Series / moving into an AC75 World Series, most likely in 2027, look like, what it counts for, where's the fleet racing, we know what the AC40 regattas look like, but will that be replicated in the big boats? I do hope so, because I think that would be incredible.
Very good. And before we wrap up this podcast, Andy, updates on Olympic week?
Yeah, Tita and Banti, who absolutely dominated the last two cycles of the Nacra 17 in the Olympic scene, they retired as a pair after winning the gold medal at Paris 2024. Caterina Banti, I'm not sure what she's been up to since then, but Tita obviously been very busy with Luna Rossa, and also as the helmsman of Red Bull Italy in SailGP last year. That didn't go so well for him. He's been replaced by Phil Robertson, and Tita has now re-teamed up with Banti to find their feet again in the Nacra 17, whilst the rest of the fleet has been pushing away for the last 2 years. And what do they go and do? They go and win day one, their first day of competition back, and as it stands after the halfway point in the series at Semaine Olympique Française in the south of France, they are still leading. So it leaves you wondering, how good are these guys? And it must leave the rest of the fleet scratching their heads. What have we been up to for the last couple of years?
So Freddie, the sun's setting behind you, or it looks like maybe even in your room in Palma.
I've gone very orange, haven't I? Yeah.
What's the rest of your week looking like, Freddie? Before we wrap up, and then
It's busy. We're sailing Rainbow tomorrow for the first time as a crew in 18 knots. So the loads will be up there. So it's going to be about us working together as a new crew for the first time, respecting the boat, respecting the loads, doing some long windward lewards. Probably on a J3, which is a short little jib where the overlap doesn't come past the shrouds. But as soon as you're moving onto a big Genoa and that thing comes halfway down the deck, my goodness, there is a whole lot of sailcloth in the sky. But I'd imagine we'll be on S sails, so symmetrical sails with the spinnaker pole back with string drops. And I'm at the back of the boat on the runners dealing with sort of 20-30 tons, which in a jibe can be pretty humbling. So you have to have your wits about you, as well as going fast on a foiling boat. It's the days where you cannot step onto a yacht with any amount of dust from a hangover. You have to be on your game.
Well,
so no beard for me.
Yeah, I was going to say straight to bed. And Andy, what are you up to over the next week?
Oh, I'm going to be filling out my complaint forms to Ryanair as to why they kept me waiting so long in Milan airport last night, and how I only got back at 4:30 this morning after the long drive back from Stansted. And I can hear Freddie already getting his little violin out.
Yeah, there it is. Playing my little violin, world's smallest violin, mate.
But amazingly, I'm at home for 2 weeks before I go to Bermuda for the next SailGP event. So that's my longest stretch at home for quite a long time.
Okay, well then let's make a date to do this again next week. Andy, Freddie, thank you very much. And of course, follow everyone's activities across the socials and use We Are the Foil as your link to that. And of course, all the great videos on the YouTube channel and the articles written by these two and the other members of the team. Benny, on thefoil.com. But for now, thank you very much for being part of our podcast. Keep the questions and the comments coming in, because hopefully, as we proved, we do read them. And when we get time, we will answer them. See you next week for the next episode of the Foil Podcast. Thanks for being there.